right, so let's get to a few of your asks for this week. Here's the first one. When people ask me the reason why I love Daryl, I really can't or don't know or want to give the actual answer, so I just say that he's a protector and I love his character development. Here's the actual reason why. I come from a mildly abusive/toxic household and neighborhood, which is why I've started getting depression all the time. Around the time I was 11-ish, started doing really bad in school and had no hope for the future. My mom was and is always great, but on the contrary, my father wasn't. Anyway, that is the reason why I relate to Daryl's character. And not only that, again, he is a protector and a great father figure and would make for a great partner if given the chance with a caring person like Beth. I totally fell in love with Still, not only because of Bethyl, but because I could just totally relate to Daryl. He had never opened up with anyone till that moment with her. And Beth's character on the other side also made me see how important it is to never lose hope and to have faith, which kind of made me get somewhat closer to God. Everything about that just totally warmed my heart. My siblings and mother are great, but I also never opened up with them about my childhood since they don't seem to have the same experience as mine, except for my brother, but we don't talk about it. Sorry for the long rant. This was totally unrelated, but I hope this helps anyone else who feels the same. And they can find comfort in knowing they're not alone. Nowadays, I'm 20 and doing much better than before. Don't lose hope. That is so sweet. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I do think that that is why so many people love The Walking Dead. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for why they love The Walking Dead, but they do tell very human stories about suffering and trials. And they, even though this is a zombie world and kind of a horror story because of that, at the same time, it's the trials that the characters go through very much mimic human trials that we all go through every day. And so we can kind of relate to them and see that in them. And I think that that's why so many people connect with the show, and especially with characters like Daryl. And I do remember there's a story that Norman has told more than once about how he sat down to read the script when he first got it. And he thought it was just going to be another zombie horror type show. He wasn't expecting anything different than that because he knew it was zombie. And when he started reading it, he was really surprised. And he's like, no, this is not a zombie show. This is a human drama that's set in a world of zombies. This is different than I thought it would be, So yeah, I think that that's a really great experience. And I'm glad that you're doing better. I'm so glad that you're not in that super toxic, abusive environment anymore. And thank you for sharing that with us. I think it will help people who feel the same and maybe have had a similar experience to that. All right. Hi, you've talked about this, but there's a thing that confuses me a bit about Beth and Tyrese's hallucination. Because in Coda, we can clearly see that Beth's wound is ridiculously high on her forehead, a total survivable wound. But in Tyrese's hallucinations, the wound is way lower on Beth's head. I mean, sure, we could say that it's just a hallucination. It doesn't represent the reality, or that the one doing the makeup misplaced it, but it don't make sense since the place of the wound is very important in her survival. Why would they put the wound lower? So the biggest answer to this is we don't know exactly, but I think it is purposeful. I think that it has something to do with what happened during the missing 17 days. It could also, I mean, you seem to be dismissing a little bit that it could just be Tyrese's perception of it because it's a hallucination, but I actually think that that might be a big part of it, that because he does think she died, he might be imagining that the wound would be lower on her head. Like a lot of the characters, it just didn't register with them that the wound was so high that she would have survived it, right? But it also kind of brings me back to 905 and Rick's dream hallucination where he sees her, and we don't see her forehead. We do see a little bit of blood on her hair, but we've got the camera zeroing in on this blood on her arm, and other than her cast, we never really saw an injury on her arm, and the blood is way higher up. It's on her bicep, like her upper arm, not where the cast was on her forearm. And we don't know the reason for that either, but I believe that they are purposeful choices by the writers, and we just don't really understand what they pertain to yet. So I couldn't say for sure, but I do think it's purposeful, and I think it probably has to do with stuff that happened during the missing 17 days. We talked about how it's kind of surprising that Rick would have hallucinated Beth in her yellow polo without her gray sweater on, because when he saw her in the hallway at Grady, she was wearing the gray sweater and it almost completely covered up the polo. I mean, he might have kind of noticed that she was wearing yellow underneath, but you would think that he would hallucinate her exactly as he last saw her. And that suggests that maybe at some point during the missing 17 days, her sweater was removed. He knew that she was wearing the yellow polo underneath, and maybe something happened where she got blood on her arm, and we don't know what that is yet. So yeah, it's definitely interesting, and I'm glad that you're noticing details like that, but we just don't have a full explanation for them yet. We can only conjecture and wait for them to tell us, what happened during those days that is leading to that sort of thing. So it'll definitely be interesting once we finally get the explanation to go back and watch these episodes and be like, oh, that's why they showed us that, So yeah, very interesting. All right, Beth is coming soon, has pictures of all of the Who Will Arrive, Who Will Survive posters from Season 5 and Terminus. Okay, and says, hey, not sure if this has been talked about, but I can't stop thinking about the Season 5 posters, and I have a little theory. I think it tells who survive, at least in the flagship show, because it's either written Who Will Survive or Who Will Arrive. Those with the word survive are Carol, Maggie, Daryl, Rick, and Beth, and they did survive the flagship show, except Beth, cough, cough. Now the posters with the word arrive. First there is Glenn, and he didn't survive. The tricky part is the Tyrese Carol and the Rick Michonne Carl posters, because there's multiple characters on it, and we can see that these two posters have a character that didn't survive, Tyrese and Carl. So this basically confirms that a solo pick with the word survive means the character survives the flagship show. A solo pick with the word arrive means that the character doesn't survive the flagship show. A duo or group pick with the word arrive means that one of the characters doesn't survive the flagship show. Any thoughts? Yeah, I think that's a really interesting observation. A lot of people will have suggested that Beth's poster, says that she points to her surviving. I mean, especially in the Carol and Tyrese one, I feel like that's more his poster. It's interesting that Carol has her own as well. And so it kind of seems like that does pertain more to Tyrese. The Rick and Michonne one, what I'm trying to do in my head is kind of apply this to the CRM, because if we end up being right that Terminus and Grady are linked to the CRM, which I think we will be, then it probably also says something about whether they're going to survive to see the CRM war. And you could argue that Rick and Michonne, even though they survived, obviously, the flagship show, they were actually not in it at the end. All of the other characters still were. So yeah, I don't know. That's a really interesting observation, and I think you're kind of onto something there. And I definitely think that Beth's poster suggests that she will survive. Anyway, so yeah, I really like that. And there might even be more posters than this, because, again, we have the one with Rick and Michonne and Carl. I don't know if Michonne has her own, but we have the one beneath that is just Rick, and that one does say survive. So, I don't know, maybe we're reading a little too much into the details and they just kind of willy-nilly chose who would have which poster to confuse us. But we also know that Gimple does very much pay attention to the details. So I really like your theory, and I think that you're probably onto something, and it's one of those things I would love to hear Gimple tell us that they chose what word to put on what character poster, but I don't know if he'll ever do that. So yeah, thanks for sending that in. That's super interesting, and we'll have to just keep an eye on what happens moving forward. Next, I feel like Daryl's never truly as happy as he was when he was with Beth back in season 4B before she was taken by the Grady cops. Sure, he has his little fling, short-term romance with Leah, and that certainly didn't last very, very long at all, which she ultimately was killed in the end. But with Beth, Bethyl for life. Yep, totally agree. Most people have said that, with the exception of the Carolers, that he has just not been the same. I mean, not only did he become really silent for several seasons, and he has come out of that a little bit, but he still just has never seemed as happy. I totally agree with everything you said there. I don't know that I have a whole lot to add, but I hope that when she returns and he sees her, he will kind of go back to that person that he was. They're going to be different people, obviously, with so many years having passed and them having been through so much, but I would like to see him smile like that again. That would be really, really cool. So yeah, totally agree. Totally with you. I think most of us are. All right, next one. We know Daryl never had a relationship, but do you think he ever had intimate relationships in his past? Did he have sex with Leah? I thought in a scene it was kind of implied they did. Yeah, I think he did. Before Leah, I don't know if he did. And they've never said one way or the other, but there have been interviews where Norman has implied that Daryl might have been a virgin before that. And, they didn't come out and say that either way in the show. So maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But I also have thought about, too, that even if he wasn't actually a virgin, it might have also been a matter of him just not connecting emotionally with someone. Like, you can see him going out with Merle and getting drunk and ending up hooking up with someone at a bar or something. And that could go either way. Like, we know that Daryl is really shy, and that might be exactly the kind of thing he would never do. But even if he did, it wouldn't bother me if they came out and said that he did, because it would almost be like he would have to get drunk and there would not be an emotional connection there. So he definitely never connected with anyone in an emotionally intimate way, and he certainly didn't have very many physical relationships, if any at all. But I do think that him and Leah did sleep together, and I think Gimple wanted to do that on purpose when he talked about it after, it wasn't after Find Me, but it was after Leah was finally killed. Gimple said that it was Daryl growing up and just actually having an adult relationship. And I think they wanted to show that, and to show that he had matured emotionally enough to sustain a relationship, because they just wanted to show that before they brought Beth back, and to show Daryl's maturity in the romantic department. And that's just the way that they did it. And so now he'll be more mature, whereas when he was with Beth, he was so not experienced in the romance department that he almost couldn't have sustained it because he didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? That just was not something he was very experienced at, right? And so, I mean, Beth was way more so than him, only because, I mean, she may have been a virgin too. I think she was, but she had boyfriends, and he hadn't had girlfriends that he was emotionally intimate with in the way that Beth might have been with her boyfriends. So anyway, I do think, yes, that him and Leah did have sex, but it was just a short-term relationship that didn't work out. And I don't know, maybe that's the understatement of the century. She tried to kill Maggie, and then Daryl killed her. Yeah, that really did not work out. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question. So I saw a few of your asks regarding Emily's contract with AMC, and I thought maybe she's still under contract because they occasionally use her songs. What do you think? Yeah, that's a good point, and that's something that I didn't mention, but they use her songs, and they also, yeah, I mean, I guess it comes down to that, them using her songs. It almost feels like they have her write songs specifically for TWD, and that's a little odd if she's not working for them. I mean, sure, they could theoretically do like a 1099 and hire her as a contractor, but I just, again, it's a little too convenient that they're doing that, and we haven't seen her be in anything else, and she's only done ABC shows. If it were just one of those things by themselves, it might not mean much, but all of them combined, it just gets to be too much of a coincidence. Yeah, I definitely think she's still under contract with them. Let's do one more. Let's see. I was watching Bethyl edits, and suddenly 2 doves, probably a couple since it's basically spring already, landed on my back porch. And shortly after the sun comes out after a rainy day, they'd left by the time the sun came out, though. But I choose to think that wasn't a coincidence. The universe acts in weird ways. Summer can't come soon enough. I agree. I very much... Oh, sorry, I'm dropping stuff. I very much believe in signs. And that's sweet. It's nice to see doves like that. And yeah, I agree. And I'm very, very excited for Daryl Dixon season 2. Heck, I'm excited to see the sneak peek into it. I mean, I don't think they'll actually show us much. I think it'll be kind of a teaser trailer. As I record this, I obviously haven't seen it yet, but I'm very, very excited to see what comes. And I've got, personally, just in my life and my work life, I've got some goals, some things I want to finish before Daryl Dixon season 2 airs, so that I can really have time to focus on it, because I think it's going to be a big deal and I don't want to be distracted by other things. So wish me luck that I will get those things done so that I can kind of put all my attention on it. All right, I'm going to call it there for today, but I will be back with more very soon. Bye, guys.